Yeah. 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 So is it okay? Can you hear me?
Can hear you with an echo, yes. Oh, can hear you again now.
Now it doesn't echo, right?
The echo's gone.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and it works.
Yeah, very good. Let's get started.
Excellent. Good.
Okay. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Leadership Night podcast. I'm Ahed. I'll be your host tonight. I'm so delighted to welcome our special guest, Steve Towers. Steve is the founder and executive vice president of the PPG. His wealth of experience in consultation, design, and deliver a large-scale program over 27 years. And also, Steve has been acknowledged as one of the world's top 30 customer service professionals for 2019, and also acknowledged as the world's top 30 global gurus for 2020. Additionally, Steve has published many books, appeared on TVs, radio, and supports and development of all approaches for the progressive enterprise towards customer-centric operation and practice as well. Steve's latest 2020 co-authored book, There, is already on the way to becoming his new bestseller, featuring the successful transformation story of the world's largest utility company. Also, if you are a fan of the Six Sigma, then Steve will help you. Steve co-manages the world's largest Lean Six Sigma group on LinkedIn, over more than 600,000 members of this group. And of course, he can answer all your questions about Six Sigma as well. He also directs and manages more than 20 progressive LinkedIn groups. He is so active on LinkedIn. He has this charisma and appearance in the LinkedIn, and also I knew Steve from LinkedIn as well. I highly recommend you to follow his LinkedIn page. He has a lot of experience to share with you as well. Steve frequently also shares keynotes, the major conferences of the theme of business transformation and customer experience as well. Steve, welcome to the Leadership Night. I'm so delighted. I'm so excited that you have given us the time today.
It's my pleasure. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much. So what did I miss? When I was reading your bio, I found a lot of achievements, a lot of accomplishments, and also a lot of experience. As I mentioned, more than 27 years of experience in the customer service, and also many books that you authored or co-authored as well. So as we were discussing before this podcast, I told you that we are here to learn from you. I have many people here over Zoom and also Facebook. They wanted to learn. They are either from customer service backgrounds or call center, which they serve also the customer as well. So what are the new ideas, the new trends in the customer service? And also, what do you prepare for us? We are all yours. We are all ears.
Okay, thank you very much, Ahed. What I've done is I put a small deck together, which we'll make available to everybody who's involved today. And basically, what the deck is, a deck I use, and I've customized it for this purpose. It's a deck I use when I have to go into boards of executives, and they're looking at CX, customer experience, if you want to think about it that way, as being a little bit soft and fluffy. So it's a deck which focuses people's attention on that. So that will form the main body of the thing. It's 30-odd slides. It's one of those things that when people get their hands on it, they can use it as a justification as well. So if you're finding some of the facets of implementing business transformation, they aren't working too well in your organization, then this is exactly the sort of thing that I do up front. I call it out. I sort of say, look, there's reasons why you're going to be doing this, and those reasons are very hard as nails. They're not soft and fluffy. Okay. And then that's no disrespect to people who are in the customer experience space generally, but there is a cadre of people who lead off on talking about customer emotions. And my view on that is, yes, of course, we want customers to have the appropriate emotion for the experiences they're going to have with us. But unless we can be doing the right thing in the first place, unless we're actually delivering products and services in the right way, then no amount of putting, lipstick on a pig is actually going to make the pig look any better. So that's I could use that sort of metaphor there. So I've got a deck. I'll walk through that. Obviously, there's going to be space and time to do like a Q&A type session. And as we were just saying there, you know, please do connect with me. There's a couple of slides in there that when you get the deck, it's got my links and things like that. So I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on it. So if I can just share my screen. Oh, I think Hamid, you'll have to let me
Yeah.
share the screen.
Yeah, 1 second here.
You tell me when you're good to go.
Yeah. So it's done. We are good to go.
Great, fantastic. Let me just get the right, make sure we got the right PowerPoint deck. You don't want to be seen. I did a radio thing yesterday with South Africa. And of course, I threw up the deck, and it was it was the wrong deck. So we spent 2 or 3 minutes reviewing somebody else's deck. But there we go. So what you should be seeing there is sort of a picture of yours truly with a whole bunch of books along the bottom, including the one that was just referenced, the Der book, which is that story of a massive organizational transformation in a former communist state-owned entity in Eastern Europe and utilities. And the first thing I'll say off the bat is, you know, my career goes back. I started as an industrial engineer, and I cut my teeth on processes and engineering and enterprise architecture and all these other sort of things that many of us will be familiar with. And I worked in corporate land. I was in the financial sector, and my last corporate incarnation was director of technology and operations within Citigroup. So a big American bank. So though I've got a very British accent, and of course I was born in England, my home is actually in the States. It's in a place called Colorado, hence the cap, if you can see it. The mountains are calling and I must go. But
Yeah.
that's for another day. So I spend my time, 50, 60% of the time inside organizations, helping them do this stuff. The organization that I come from, bpgroup.org, that you can see on the screen, is we operate as a not-for-profit. And it's very deliberate that what our key performance indicator is how quickly have we upskilled organizations to do this for themselves. So this isn't about parachuting in 20 consultants and then going all over the organization and telling us what we already know are the problems and just glossing them up. No, this is about upskilling people. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that later. The books are thematic about the times that we're in. So the first one, though, is back in business process reengineering, was back in the early 90s. And Michael Hammer and Jim Champion came up with this idea of, you know, don't automate, obliterate. So that really appealed to me, because so much of what we are doing around customer experience and customer centricity, people will talk about digital. And what's that phrase? If you automate a mess, you get an automated mess. So I'm very keen that organizations can get a grip on that, and they can go from the get-go and improve the business performance, the shareholder performance. So without further ado, that's a little bit of the background on myself. I'm also a qualified medical hypnotherapist. So when people say to me, I'm not sure I'm going to get this stuff, Steve, I say, leave that to me. I'll work on that for you. Okay. And I specialize in trauma counseling. So we're all in a state of trauma at the moment, aren't we? So I was just hearing some of the stories of some of the people just before we started, and that was very interesting. So let's get into this deck. As I say, it's 30 odd slides. The whole idea is I wanted to give you something rather than just be, you know, a talking head and have an interesting sort of time together. Give you something that you could use and customize. So I'll give you this both in a PDF format and a PowerPoint format at the end. The reason you get it in 2 formats is, of course, PDF preserves all the fonts, whereas if you get it in PowerPoint, unless you've got these particular fonts on your system, it'll screw with them. But the whole idea is that you get this. So it's all about building the case for customer centricity. And it doesn't matter whether you're already well into programs in terms of customer service and customer experience, there's always the need to actually validate what we're doing. So though this is aimed primarily at organizations who are just really getting into it and trying to understand it and perhaps have the wrong perception of it, the whole essence of the messaging is that what you can do is you can take these ideas and actually relate them back in your own organization and your own context. So build the case for customer centricity and outside in. What do I mean by outside in? Well, outside in is this perspective of looking through the customer lens back into our organization. Because historically we've inherited a world which has been in industrial age thinking, production mindsets, And I myself, as an industrial engineer, were partly responsible for that as well. But that aside, what this shift in perspective for these organizations that are very successful, and we'll have a look at a few of them in a moment, is to shift the focus to outside in. And that was a theme back in, 10 years ago when I wrote the book called Outside In, which was a storybook for CEOs, effectively. And so it wasn't a great technical book. Some of them have been quite technical. It was a book which focused on the case studies of organizations who'd made this transformation and were beginning back then, 10 or so years ago, to break new ground. Now, fortunately for all of us on this call, is that ground not only got broken, but it got built upon. And of course, we now have a lot of splendid case studies that we can talk about. But still, we have people who perceive customer experience, customer service as being a nice to have, whereas it's key and essential, especially in our sort of post-COVID world as we move to that area. So one of the kickbacks I sometimes get when I start talking about this is that organizations will put the blame for the lack of performance on the competitor. And Albert Bray came up with this observation, those comments there about Amazon, Netflix, Uber, Apple and Airbnb, talking about what those guys really got was understanding what customer needs were, what customer needs are, and being able to sometimes to interpret what those needs are before the customer themselves knew. Whereas the other people, the ones who went bust, like Blockbuster, for instance, they were stuck in a mindset of still doing the same old, and just improving it. So they got really good at making products that nobody wanted anymore. That was the essence of it. So these people we talk about, the Ubers, the Airbnbs and the Netflix, yeah, they're changing and transforming the world, but they're not doing it because they're obsessed over competitors. They're what Jeff Bezos refers to as being customer obsessed. They're looking all the time at getting a better understanding of their customers, listening 100% of the time to what the customers are saying. So with that in mind, I just wanted to sort of put that on there. So the disruptor has you in the sight, as we would say. So if you haven't already felt those sort of waves of transformation coming around your business and industry, and it doesn't matter whether you're in a for-profit, whether you're in a governmental organization, charitable organizations, state, everywhere where there's a customer, this is happening. And I'm trying to think of organizations on the planet that don't have a customer, and I don't think there are any. So this is appropriate for everybody. So Amazon, of course, are leading the way, and of course, testimony to the fact that Jeff Bezos is the richest guy on the planet. They must be doing something right, but they're following a set of principles, and we're going to talk about those principles here and now. Some of the guys who've retained my services in the last decade, the last 10 years, I've actually been in business around about 40 years now, so that's obviously way too long. But you'll see some of those, all different parts of the world. Naturally, when I'm talking about examples, I use the ones that I've got direct experience of. If you talk with any of my colleagues across the BP group, then they're going to draw on different experiences. You know, so there's guys like the CX rockstar, James Dawkins, who you've got to get on this show. He's really splendid. He's just hosted today the CX quiz. I mean, talk about bringing a fresh perspective on this stuff, you know, rather than the same old, same old. So naturally, I pick out sort of case studies from some of these organizations that I've closely worked with. The stateside ones reflect where I've lived in the States, in Massachusetts, Texas, and now Colorado. So I'm up there in the Rockies. At the moment, I'm coming to you from the UK. I managed to fly back just before COVID hit, and we've been in a virtual lockdown for 5 months here in the UK. I'm staying at our sort of daughter's place. So we're just making waves now at sort of trying to book flights back and things, but you get the picture. I'm all over the world working with different organizations, doing different things. So we'll have a chance to ask questions about that later. Now, another thing that's happening is this perception of B2C and B2B, so business to business and business to consumer, through the idea that these two things are separate and different. They're not. You're either a B2B2, B2, B2C, or you're a direct B2C. That's the essence of it. What you've got to do is figure out where's the money coming from. So when Amazon people say, yeah, Amazon is a B2C. No, they're not. 70% of sales in Amazon come from B2B type activities with Amazon Web Services. Right. So you can apply these principles. It doesn't matter whether you're in working in a hospital and you're a nurse, or whether you're the CEO of one of the world's largest global corporations, or whether you're a one-man band. you can apply these principles to the work that you're doing. And in doing that, you can make significant changes. So I throw that in there because sometimes you get kickback saying, we're not an Amazon, Steve. And I go, what is an Amazon? What do you mean? They go, well, you know, their insights, their innovation. And you go, it's a bunch of people with a common purpose using a set of techniques and tools which have been tried and tested and proven. That's you can boil it down to that. So if you're thinking about in terms of different organizations, and then I've got a couple of slides here which I like to, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about in terms of leadership and transformation. But this was something I drew a couple of years ago, which was, what I wanted to do was contrast the traditional way organizations have looked at improving with what I refer to as outside in. Amazon call it working backwards, but the principle applies. We would start off traditionally developing products and services. We would take those to market, and then we find customers, and we segment customers by circumstance. So where do you live? What's your income? What's your family situation? And so on. And in fact, we can sometimes find ourselves pitching at the whole world, and we end up on the right there in a big bad mess. Well, why is it a big bad mess? Well, the reality is that the structures that we've inherited were never designed to do what we're trying to do in the third decade of the 21st century. They were designed for, you know, making cars more efficiently, more effectively. A lot of the techniques that we've got were all about making our factories better, right? And we took that factory mindset and then applied it into the service world. Well, what's that about? You know, why did we do that? Making everything look like a production line. Now, those structures were designed to operate with productivity and efficiency and effectiveness in mind. So if you imagine your traditional silo structure, and we'll have a look at one of those in a minute or two, and then customers changed. You and I became fickle. We became less loyal. We became very choosy. And there is a magnitude of thinking that says customers have become promiscuous. So not promiscuous in that way, but promiscuous in the sense that we will go with anybody who can provide us with the right product and service if we have a choice. So yeah, things that were bedrock of the past, you know, standardization, commonality, customers having very predictable behaviors, well, they've gone out the window a while ago. So that's why we end up with this big bad mess where organizations have tried to overlay onto that structure all these different, well, if customers are going to be promiscuous and move about with different products, I've got to, you know, I've got to have the capacity to be able to deal with that. So contrast that with the simplicity of this slide, which is the whole essence of what I believe in terms of really successful customer experience, customer service is all about. Really understand who your customer is and identify not what, you know, where they're living and why they're living and what the mean income is and all that sort of stuff, but figure out what their real needs are. And when we start to think about categorization by need, it emerges us with a whole different way of thinking about how we might deliver against those needs. Only when we understand our customers and their needs should we then set about developing services and products to deliver against it. And of course, which model is working best? Well, this one, it wins hands down because it's aligning the organization to something Amazon referred to the North Star. It's North Star alignment. It's the whole organization can see where they should be looking and continually moving in that direction. So it's not just people, it's our IT systems, it's our infrastructure, it's our political systems and so on. It's about North Star alignment. And this sort of modeling where we're, as I said, Bezos refers to it as working backwards, but the first person who coined this whole idea of outside in was Steve Jobs. I think we've all known of Steve Jobs, haven't we? And he said, you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology, not the other way around. Does that make sense? So, yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, good.
And I had a lot of friends also, they are working in Amazon, and when I asked them, what is the strategy there, or what is the way that you're thinking about the customer service? He replied to me with only one statement, and it was a powerful statement. The statement was, start from the customer and backward.
Yeah.
And that was amazing for me because everything this is the real customer-centric service, because the customer now is the center for each and everything that we are doing. And this is exactly what you're saying right now.
Yeah, and it's so true, because if you think about, if we could figure out who our customer is and what their real needs are, and oftentimes again figuring out their needs before they actually have them, then we're going to be in a better place. And I recall when where Bezos tells this story about how they started working backwards. One of the things he had to do back at the time was issue what became known as the Bezos mandate, and it was instructions for how the technology guys should do their work. So it wasn't to do it in the way they'd always done it in the past. Look, you will adhere to these precepts and principles, and if you don't, you're probably not worthwhile working here at Amazon anymore, because this is the way we're going to do it. So it does require, a leadership to have both the sense of direction and the ability to bring other people with you. But given that, as we get into this, you'll see that it's all numbers oriented. There's no reason why you can't justify working backwards or going outside in. So in that sort of context, the customer experience thing is top of everybody's agenda. We know research groups like Gartner and Forrester and those guys, the articles in Forbes and places like that, we're all talking about the importance of it. But I often see organizations trying to do CX as if it's another department. They're trying to do customer service as if it's another department. It isn't. Customers have always had experiences. It's only in the last few years that we've started to get scientific about how we understand those experiences and how we can deploy them in a meaningful way. So this all sounds good and proper. So what's getting in the way of delivering it? Well, it's this structure. It's our functional specialist silo structure. And everywhere I go on the world, before, well, 2019, I did 400,000 air miles. So everywhere I go on the planet and I say, can I see how you're structured? Invariably, it's going to be a chart that looks like this. Now, the interesting thing is this chart doesn't physically exist. It's not like a chair or a table. It's a collective hallucination, but it bounds the way we think about the work that we do. Right, so I'll just let that sink in, matrix-like. It's a collective hallucination. It's not real. And yet it bounds our lives and our careers and the way we think about what we want to do and how we want to do it. So why is it wrong? Well, it was designed again with this idea that there are functional specialists, as we see the sales, operations, customer service, and so on. And these people have unique sets of skills, and they're also driven by key performance indicators, which are appropriate to the work that they're doing. And think about that. It's appropriate to the outputs they're achieving. So of course, in call centers, we all know average handle time, abandon rates, sort of delayed work, and all those sort of metrics that we have around the place. They're all measures of doing things. Well, wouldn't it be cool if we had measures in customer experience centers of the outcomes we were delivering? Well, this structure, functional specialist silo structure, was never designed to do it. So let me prove it. If we overlaid that with an experience or a process, and the two are interchangeable, by the way. So to that point about the Six Sigma at the start, people will say, Steve, have you left the world of Lean Six Sigma, even though you're a master black belt and you got that from GE? Have you left that world? I go, no, everything's a process. Everything anybody does anywhere is a process. But again, some of the baggage with customer experience is that they sometimes can perceive themselves as being separate to the process thing. And the reason they would say is that although that process stuff is all old industrial age stuff, and you say it doesn't have to be. It's a pattern of behavior. It's a pattern and a way of doing things that if we connect the dots in the right way, we can take it to a new place. So here we've got a process, an experience meandering its way through the organization. So classically, if we were to put the paying customer onto this diagram, where would we normally put them? Where would they go? Yep, you're probably right. On the extreme left and the extreme right, all right? And we talk about end-to-end working. Where does that come from? Again, another factory analogy. We talk about, the people who are sort of facing off to the customer, they're in the front line, right? Well, that's a warlike analogy, isn't it? Are we fighting the customer? Are we fighting the customer? I shouldn't think we ought to be. No, they're down in the trenches. Another analogy which we've inherited. So let's think about this for a moment. We're banging the drum as the CEO of this wonderful organization and saying the customer is really important to us. It's changed so much in the last few years. We've got to focus our attention on it. And the person in operations there in the black box says, oh, I get that. I'm a customer myself. But hey, do you know in the value chain, I'm 9 steps away from the customer on the left and I'm 4 or 5 steps away from the customer on the right. So I hear what you say, but the customer's not my job, somebody else's job. The reality of that is the only reason it's not their job is the way we've drawn the chart. Now, as we've already said, the chart is a collective hallucination. What if we drew different charts where we put the customer at the center of everything, right? And we drew charts of people and processes and systems in concentric circles going out from the customer, right? And it would still be a collective hallucination, but it's one that's probably going to be more appropriate for the time we're in now. So the customer's not my job is a cry we hear. So somebody's saying we have to be customer centric. It can be a tough sell. So I'll whiz through these slides so you can read them offline. Why do we need to be customer centric? Couldn't we just try better at doing what we're already doing? Yeah, just do more of the same. Well, there's 4 reasons why. It makes money, it reduces costs, it boosts motivation, you know, for every one of us who's working in these environments. And oh, by the way, there's no choice as well. So let's skate through this landscape. So number 1, it makes money. Well, what do we mean by that? How does that actually hang together? So many arguments, as I've already indicated, around customer centricity are soft and fluffy. Right. Yes, we do want to get the right emotions with customer. And yes, we do want people loving our brand, but we're not going to get there if we're not doing the right thing, right? Those emotions, though, that customer happiness come about as a consequence of being able to promise something and deliver it successfully. So managing the expectation, right? It doesn't come about by, you know, you do something wrong and then you go into apologetic mode and you try to bribe the customer with, you know, staying with you. Let's figure out how to get things right. Now, that is a core competence of people who've done things like industrial engineer, who have process mindsets. But what we can do is we can look beyond just looking inside the organization and extend it out to the complete customer experience. And that's a big differentiator for those organizations who really get it. So it makes money. How does it make money? Well, happy customers come back for more. So if we're doing the right thing, you'll get the footfall returning to you. By having a focus on the successful customer outcome, because we understand their needs, anything which isn't contributing to that, why are we doing it anymore? Can't we free up that scarce resource to do more worthy work? That would be sensible, wouldn't it? But it's counterintuitive, because most of the time, our process improvement languages talk about looking at what we're doing and how do we make it run better? How do we get it more efficient and more effective and more productive? Well, nothing wrong with doing that as long as you're doing the right thing. But, you know, oftentimes we might be fixing a mess that doesn't deserve to exist. All right. So we can get to this picture of making money by organizing ourselves around doing the right thing. So whether that's processes, experiences, whatever it is. Some examples here recently about how our industry is changing. So of course, with the advent of 5G, a lot of infrastructure industry, so I'm thinking like of broadcasters and things like that, the carpet will be pulled out from underneath their feet. Well, what's their reaction to it at the moment? It's, well, we've got to make better dishes. Right, we've got to get better technology. We've got to get more signal down the fiber link or whatever. No, that's all going away. So it's not as if the writing isn't on the wall for some of these industries. And I relate back in some of the stories that I tell to Nokia when Apple introduced the iPhone. And in 2007, Nokia were the most profitable telecommunications company on the planet. And then somebody came from nowhere, right? Wasn't even in the industry, and literally took the carpet from underneath them. And within a couple of years, Nokia were no more. They disappeared as far as an entity is concerned. Now, why are people in denial about that? Well, it's because they're busy doing the wrong things. So we've got to get the focus shifted to what is the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is to deliver successful customer outcomes. So we could demonstrate that if you focus on customer experience, and here we have some sort of snapshots from Forrester from a few years ago, the value that you're going to create is going to be significantly more than if you just do the same old and get better at doing that. So better CX correlates with a higher revenue growth across major industries. So that's the reason why you do it. It makes money. Now, to some people in CX, I'm like, oh, because one of my kickers is, we've got to get more scientific about this stuff. And they go, no, we don't want more science. We want more feeling and emotion. And then I go back to this thing about, if you're not doing the right thing, the emotions you're going to get are going to be the negative ones. We've got to figure out the right thing to do. But we're all motivated by this. I'm working with a charity, and I said, you've got to grow your revenues. And they said, no, money's not nice. It's very, you know, we don't want revenues. We want contributions. So I go, so how scientific are you about the contributions you receive? And they go, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, how do you go about organizing yourself so that you can maximize the contributions that you get from your customers? Oh, we don't call them customers, they're contributors, right? Who make contributions. I said, so how do you let the little old lady know, instead of leaving it to the cat's home, they could leave it to you as a charitable foundation? And they go, oh, no, we don't get involved in that, right? Well, they do now. The company I'm actually talking about is the Nature Conservancy. It's they're based out of Arlington near Washington, DC in the US. And they are now the most progressive, most successful charity on the planet. Right. Well, how did they get there? Because they've got the same people in the same buildings. They started to look at the world differently. They started to look at it from that outside in, working backwards perspective. And that shift allowed people to then sort of say, well, why are we still doing this? And why are we still doing that? And of course, they're able to make use of the contributions, because it's not revenue, is it? Contributions in the right sort of way. Another big perspective is it reduces cost. Well, I've already indicated, if you figure out what the customer need is, and we align ourselves to doing it, anything else that you were doing that was around that, you don't need to do anymore. So we can get rid of bureaucracy and red tape. And I refer to this idea of winning the Triple Crown. And the chap who introduced me to this phrase was a guy called Jim Siner, who some of you will remember. He was the sort of head of Gartner for many years in terms of doing research, but his specialism has always been around process management, business process management, and so on. And latterly, over the last few years, he's come into that sort of CX domain. But Jim and I will talk about it. We're as old as each other, and we'll talk about it. It's the same stuff, right? It's just we've extended the scope of it to embrace the complete customer experience. And what do I mean by that? Well, typically, a process in an organization starts when it crosses the threshold. So whether that's a digital threshold or a physical threshold, somebody walks in the store, and it's over when they've got the good or service that they came in to buy, right? It's like that. So it might be in the airline industry, it might be buying a ticket to getting your bag off the carousel at the end. Well, people like Southwest Airlines said, no, that's not good enough. Fixing things within that context doesn't understand the customer need. You've got to go to where the need arises, and it isn't over until the need's finished. Now let's fix the context of the customer experience. That's what we call going outside in. It's where you look at where the need arises, and it isn't over until the need's set. So in an airline context, I need to go on a flight, right? And it isn't over till I'm back at home, with a coffee and relaxing, with the family again. So if we could fix things in that context, we don't have to try just fixing them within our own organization. We could actually go out into the experience. So there's lots of examples of that. And one of the links I'll give you later is that you sign up for the pre-publication version of Customer Experience Secrets. So it's like I'm trying to do a sales pitch. No, it's free. I'm going to make it free for everybody who's on this call. So we don't have to be stuck in this maze and this dilemma. These are all what I refer to as moments of truth and handovers going on inside an organization. The bottom line of Post-its there is the time scale. And this was a classic insurance claims, automotive claims in the US, right? And they took all this considerable mess, and you can imagine all the associated costs, because all those things are tasks and activities and work being done, and changed it. So instead of all those tasks and activities, they could do what used to take them 20 days, they could effectively do it in 2. Now, you don't get from 20 days to 2 by examining your 20 days. That's the inside out way. What you've got to figure out is what is the right thing to do, and then how do we migrate from the old to the new? Again, I'm sharing some of the insights which are so simple, it sort of beggars belief sometimes. But this is exactly. So you have a car accident. Classically, you'd have to fill a claim form in, go and get 3 quotes from different garages, discuss with them what your deductible, your excess is on your policy, arrange for the car to be fixed, arrange for a replacement car, then go and collect your car, and then finish off with the claim. And that's why it took 20 days. What Progressive do, as the name is on the frame there, what Progressive do, you have an accident, they have a little black box installed underneath the hood or underneath the bonnet, if you use that. It depends on where you are in the world, doesn't it? And when this car comes to an unnatural stop, it sends a signal back to base. Base phone you on your mobile phone. Are you okay, Steve? Yeah, I'm fine. I just hit a slick patch. The car's off the road. Is the car out of the way of the traffic? Is it so? Yeah, it's fine. Stay with your vehicle, Steve, and we'll have somebody with you within 20 minutes. So, and somebody arrives in 20 minutes with a set of keys for a nicer car than the one that you've been driving, right? And says, we'll bring your car back when it's fixed. End of story. No claim form to fill in. The person who arrives to give you the keys, of course, is a qualified assessor anyhow. So if they need to liaise with the police or any other witnesses, they can do it. Well, to you, that mini process takes 20 minutes, but the car's back with you within 48 hours. You know, they take it to a repairer, they go get the job done, and then they bring it back all spring cleaned and everything like that. So it's just one example of working backwards, working outside in that sort of customer-centric thinking. And the other advantage you get as well, as you can see, there's a whole list of it's not just about improving revenues and reducing costs. You reduce fraud, you get a lower level of disputes, you lower your marketing costs, you improve your retention rates, you lower your retention costs. And you can see all these things, they're all factual measures. They're not soft and fluffy. We could attach metrics to all these, and then we can show, you know, how does that actually fit together? And this is precisely what organizations like, you know, Progressive will do. So reason number 2 we do it, it's cost reduction. So reason number 3, I like this one as well. It boosts motivation. And we all want to be working in organization where there's a degree of positivity and customers love us.
Before we go to the
yeah, of course,
third reason, I have one comment related to the second reason. For sure, it's going to reduce the cost of many things, but yet I saw many organizations, they say that, and especially now in the pandemic, they say that now we just want to achieve the level of customer service. We don't want to go to the customer excellence, or we are not seeking for that right now, or at this time, or at the time of change, or at some certain times they have. So they say that I will spend this amount of money for training people to be trained to, and for example, for the same example that you have given to us, which is the car accident. So I will give training to the people how to communicate. I will give training to the people how to finalize this process shorter than normal, and so on. I will pay amount of time for this customer who comes with a claim to, for example, to have reception for them or waiting area for them. I will spend a lot of time and a lot of money, a lot of efforts, which I can right now avoid, and I will not afford it right now in this time, especially in the pandemic time, because they don't want to spend this amount of money. So I feel that they don't see those benefits. They only now see that they are going to pay this amount of money without getting anything in return.
Yeah. And you will meet that resistance, and that's very much what this deck is about, is to actually demonstrate to, and where I like to pitch this deck is the chief finance officers, right? Of course, I'm privileged in the fact that I can do that because I've worked with a lot of these organizations. You saw the names earlier on, but the CFO will drive this. And how many people would say the CFO driving improved customer experiences and customer service? How does that work? Well, it's obvious. If you're actually managing to grow revenues and reduce costs as a consequence of doing this, it's not a pitch, but the thing I say to people, look, any project that you're working on, which is about customer experience and it's doing it from the outside in, is self-funding. It will pay for itself, you know, within a quarter. Right. So you don't have to be looking at an ROI on this. You don't have to be thinking of a return on investment. It's not the radio program I mentioned yesterday. We were talking about the challenges for digital, right? And so digital CX. And my take on that is, look, unless you figured out what the right thing to do is first, don't start doing anything. Don't go and automate stuff. Don't go and start doing all that data analysis. Figure out what the right thing to do is, and only then align yourself to do it. So the idea that, you know, there's a mindset out there of customer service thinking, which says, look, we're not about customer excellence. This isn't about customer excellence. This is about doing the right thing, delivering a successful customer outcome. And if we can get laser-like focused on that, anything else we're doing can fall away. You know, we can get rid of the bureaucracy and the red tape, and we can be more direct. So if it wasn't for the fact that there's literally dozens and dozens of examples of organizations doing this, and so that's what I do, is it's not about a charm offensive trying to convince them. If you trained, and our ethos in the BP group as a not-for-profit is to train up a bunch of coaches and mentors in each organization so they can do it. So you'll have seen some of those organizations, even with 40 years on them about, I couldn't possibly get across all those organizations and run transformation programs. So our coaches and mentors are all about spending, I'll talk to you about one at the end of this. It's like a 4-day, 5 hours a day program where we train up a couple of people and then they go and train their own organization. And that's how quickly it can actually happen as soon as you've done that. So I take your point exactly. But the whole idea of doing a deck like this is to get away from that sort of, it's not about customer happiness for the sake of it. This is going to save you a fortune and it's going to please the shareholders. So whether we're shareholders as citizens of our government entities, or whether we're actually shareholders of a charitable organization, this stuff aligns with that success. So that was a great question, great observation. So it reduces, so it grows revenue, it reduces money, it boosts motivation. So we all want to be working in organizations where customers are happy, because we know that if we're working in organizations where the customers are dissatisfied, that has a very negative impact on our psyche, on our ability to be able to, deliver service and so on like that. And there's enough surveys out there which actually demonstrate that, happier employees will produce more content customers. And in fact, if you look at somebody like Richard Branson, the CEO of Virgin, he often says his most important customer is his employee. Because if I can't give them the right tools and the right techniques and the right wherewithal to be able to do their job, I'm not going to get happy customers. I'm not going to get satisfied customers. So his most important endeavor is ensuring his employees have everything that they need to be able to do the job successfully on behalf of the customer. So that again is another nuance where we sort of think, we're going to build the best customer service in the world, but if we're paying people in the wrong way and we're disenchanting them and demotivating them, it's not going to work. So we have just got to get the line straight. So happy people make more profit. You don't have to believe me on that. Again, there's enough sort of surveys which actually show that. But of course, if you talk to some of the more draconian old industrial age type managers, people who are oftentimes my age these days, is they don't like the sound of that because it's taken them like 30 or 40 years to climb the totem pole. And you come along with all this newfangled stuff about customers and stuff. What are they going to do? Well, they might accept that what you're saying is true, but they still don't want to implement it because it's upsetting. None of us like change. What's that old expression? The only person who likes to change is a baby, right? So we want to get this happy, motivated employee workforce, and we do that because, of course, we align to the successful customer outcome. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in. This customer experience management thing is the new battlefield. To me, it's an extension of everything we've done before. And I like to think about it, the way my life has gone is all about patterns. So I play chess. I'm an international chess master. I'm into meteorology, the weather. I love astronomy. So the patterns in the sky and stuff like that. Process is a pattern and customer experience is a pattern. If you could figure out what the right pattern is and then help your organization to implement it, wow, the sky's the limit. Your costs will fall away. If you're in a revenue generating organization, revenue will go up. If you're in a non-revenue generating organization, you'll be able to do more with the same, and that's better, freeing up resource to do more meaningful things. That's got to be good. And service will improve. Customers will feel the benefit and they'll keep, if they have a choice, they'll keep coming back to you instead. So tribute to Alberto Bray, who made this observation to actually shift the thinking away from being competitor obsessed and doing the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats thing, and actually becoming customer obsessed. Focus on the successful customer outcomes, figure out what it is we need to do to deliver them, and then deploy that as a solution. That really comes down to being as sort of simple as that. So remember Amazon's story, they were a book club, for goodness sake. So there's no choice. So you've answered the question, why do we need to be customer centric? Well, it checks all the boxes. So the getting it of this stuff precedes implementation. So I've seen organizations start to do CX for the wrong reasons. And of course it fails. And then they say, you know, that CX stuff, it doesn't work. Didn't work for us. We tried it. A customer service thing, we tried it, but it didn't work. It's because they're trying to fix the mess instead of understanding the agenda's changed. So I'm going to pause now, and there must be a whole bunch of questions. You must be wanting to interrogate me. So
yeah. We have a lot of questions related to how the customer service in this digital world will be. Because many people, they are asking right now that many business now are shifting to from normal business to digital right now. And it reminds me with at least the industry that I'm working in, healthcare. We had a issue that people, they were so afraid to come to our hospitals. Why? Because they thought that we are the main point, the huge point of the infection and the pandemic as well. So they refused to come to the hospital, even if they have any challenge in their health. But what we try to do is to change our business from the normal business in outpatients to be teleconsultations.
Yeah.
So people now, they call the doctor, speak to the doctor, get all the vital signs, and then to be sent to the doctor. The doctor has the diagnostics and everything, and then to send the prescription to the pharmacy. Pharmacy delivers the medicine to the patient. But the question here is, with this change, with this dynamic change, we call it the new norm, because of course, the era before Corona, it's not like the era after Corona. But the main idea now is, we as hospital or healthcare or any other industries, we are trying to transform the majority of our business from normal to digital. So I'm afraid here that we lose the passion of implementing CX. So how we can provide at least good or adequate customer service through the digital platforms?
Okay, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Interesting enough, what it's forced a lot of people to do going through COVID, and healthcare is a really prime example of that, is to look at different ways of working. And the discovery of those different ways of working means that that landscape has changed forever. So I was talking with one of the larger banks in Africa yesterday, and I was asking, when are people going back to the offices? And one of the EXCO, the executive committee, said, you know, actually, I think 70 or 80% of our workforce will never come back into the office, because we've learned we can do this differently. In the same way that the digital has really helped to have those remote consultations and collect all the data that we used to have to do when we would go into a clinic or a hospital situation. That's a good thing, because it's better delivering against the customer need. Now, along the way, it's not about, glossing that up, as we might say, in terms of what the actual experience is, but it's adding value into the experience. So one of the healthcare providers that I know here in Europe, for instance, what they're doing is they're getting into lifestyle management as well. So it's not just prevention and cure. It's actually, look, if I can encourage you to, do more exercise, eat more of the right foods and things like that. And you think, yeah, but they're a hospital. They're a health trust. And you go, well, isn't that the point? And they go, no, well, they're going to lose customers, aren't they? Because there won't be as many people who get ill anymore. So, why would you do that? And a really good example of that, and thinking about it from a digital component point of view, is how much of the stuff that we used to have to do manually, can we elevate and align to the customer need, and then add value in that way as well? So not just strip out the, interpersonal contact. How do we do that digitally? We've all been sort of, variously working from home and using Zoom and Teams and Google Meet, all these different platforms and stuff. But a missing component is the face-to-face, the true being in the room together thing. So how could we, in terms of our customers, the people that we're working with on a day-to-day level, how can we put that back into digital? How can we create that empathy? How can we create that sort of camaraderie that exists if you're in a one-to-one situation with the same person in the room. So it's about finding different ways of doing it. But we know the real motivator for wanting to do it is to be able to deliver a successful customer outcome, rather than thinking about how do we just do what we're doing better. It's like, if we're going to go digital, right, we've got to make sure we have the right structures in place, we get the right expertise on board around CX, we have the right level of maturity in our organization. Because, if people think of the world like a production line and you start talking about CX, you'll lose the battle. You sometimes have to reframe what you're talking about in their context to give them the benefit that they derive. What you mean? We can get faster throughput. We can get it from 20 days down to 2. Wow, I'm going to win prizes there for the reduction in elapsed time. You don't even need to mention the word customer service or the words or customer experience, for instance. Yeah. And then digital needs the right strategic imperatives, not just piecemeal. We've fixed this, we've fixed that, we've fixed the other. And people will say, well, digital has a big cost associated with it. It doesn't have to do. If we're aligning to the successful customer outcome, it'll decouple all the bureaucracy that we've traditionally had in the back ends.
Yeah.
Good.
So I have also another question. It comes from project management backgrounds as well. He asks that, of course, they want to implement the customer satisfaction or the CX programs, but the main challenge that they face, especially the project managers, that this tight timeline, they should finish or they should deliver, they should hand over this project in this particular timeline. So they will compromise a lot of customer experience here to deliver on time. So they will shift their focus from providing excellent customer service to only providing service to the customer.
Yeah, mediocre
and
service.
Imagine that this is the kick-off interaction of the project. Imagine that this is the project and we are starting a new project. Yeah. And because of the tight timeline, they compromise the customer service to achieve their goal and hand over or deliver the project on time.
There is an expression that I use sometimes. If you pay people for doing dumb things, they'll get really smart at it, right? So if our reward structure, and in this instance, the metrics by which we're measuring success, did your project come in on time, to budget, and achieve those deliverables? And we put a tick in the box there. If that compromises on the successful customer outcome, then we shouldn't ought to be doing it. So where's the fundamental problem there? The fundamental problem is how our metric system works, how our key performance indicators are working, because a lot of them will still be oriented in the old world against measuring what we're doing rather than measuring the outcomes we're achieving. So if we shift our focus from the outputs of what we're doing to the outcome that we want to achieve, and the metric system guides that behavior. Whereas I'll give you an example, a call center example. A friend of mine, he runs an investment bank in London. And periodically we get together, and it was one of those gets together, and he's been going for 8 years, he's a very successful businessman. And he said, Steve, I know you do this hypnotherapy thing. Can you come in and hypnotize my people to be more motivated? So I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, I've got a problem. He said, the motivation, he said, he's gone through the floor these last 2 years. So I said, well, what have you done to them? And he said, I haven't done anything. He said, it's the same people I recruited 7 or 8 years ago. He said, but there's no wind in their sails anymore. They're so demotivated. So he said, will you come in and hypnotize them? And I said, well, I can't do that. That might not be ethical if they don't want to be hypnotized. But at the same time, I could come along and let's do that. He says, I do this management by walkabout thing, every Wednesday. Could you come in then? So I go along on this Wednesday, and he says, look, we'll walk around the floor. Let's go in the call center. So we go into the call center, and bearing in mind it's an investment bank, so people are dealing with high net worth individuals. This isn't like, people are buying a dozen eggs. This is like people who have got investment portfolios, right? So he said, and look, and you look across the call center, it looks fine, looks okay. And so he gets his team leaders together, and he said, introduce you to Steve, explains who I am. And he says, right, guys, I keep banging the drum about the customer and how important the customer is to us. And we all know that, don't we? The customer is our bread and butter. They pay our salaries. So I want you today to go out there and really not only just have a smile on your face, I want you to figure out what the best outcome those customers could get and give it to them. Can you do that? And they're going, yeah. And he nudges me and says, see what I mean? There's just not, you know, and he goes on to his next team leaders, very similar reaction. So we're going to have a coffee. And while we're having a coffee, he said, oh, you said, this is really frustrating me. I'm going to go back in there. He said, and I've got to bang that drum a bit harder. So after the coffee, we go back into the call center. He calls his team leaders over again. And he says, guys, I can't emphasize enough how important the customer is to us. And now we've got to deliver success at every single interaction, every moment of truth. We have to deliver success. Do we get that? No. Yeah. And he said, no, seriously, I really want you to put the energy and enthusiasm into those customer interactions. Oh, and by the way, we've got to get that average handle time down to less than 3 minutes. Right. He just lost it completely at that point. It's because, of course, the people are managing themselves based on the measurement system. And if the measurement system's causing them to do dumb things, it doesn't matter. You know, you haven't solved the customer problem, but it's 2 minutes, 50 seconds. Oh, I think the line's going. I'll call you back later. Right. Failure demand goes through the ceiling. Demotivated employees result because you're not actually satisfying the customers and so on. So we do I think, just to finish off the end of the answer to that very long answer to a short question, is we do a metrics thing where we sort of say, so look at how you measure success at the moment. Get your common measures out on the table and mark with a marker pen, mark in red all those things which are measures of outputs. So in our call centers, for instance, that would be, as I've already said, average handle time, abandon rates, throughput, you know, or delays, all that sort of thing. And then mark in green all the things which are measures of outcomes, right? And you'll find typically Pareto kicks in and 80% of the measures will be red measures. So the emphasis there is we want to be measuring more outcome measures. So to your project question there is that we're measuring the wrong things, which is causing abhorrent behavior, which compromises customer success. So we've got to get that mechanism in place, which talks about measuring the right things. And what are the right things to measure? Well, what's the customer need we're trying to satisfy? Now, how can I articulate those in 4 or 5 discrete measures that we know we've delivered against that need? Right? Even when the customer can't, you know, and don't go and ask the customer what they want because they'll tell you, and then more fool you if you go and deliver it. You know, it's like asking our kids what they want for dinner. What's he going to say? They said pizzas, gummy bears, ice cream, custard, all on the same plate, right? We know, as good parents and, in my instance, grandparents, we know what they need. And there's probably something on the green scale with a little treat afterwards. So why do we incessantly keep going asking our customers what they want? Because they tell us. And then we go and do it. And it still fails. Right? We've got to figure out what they need. Right. So I don't know that solves the problem in terms of project management, because until the measurement system changes, but then part of this whole movement around customer experience is having it's happening at every level in the organization. You've got to open the conversation about, do you know, I'm delivering projects on time, to budget, and achieving the deliverables, and you're paying me a bonus for doing that. Yeah. I don't think it's really improving customer service. In fact, our customer satisfaction figures are going through the floor as a consequence of that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, definitely. So another question related to training. The question says that they conduct the training, customer service training, a very good program, and they spend the time with the people for 3 or 5 days to conduct customer service training, a very good customer service training, and people finishes the training and they are so happy and they are so motivated and they wanted to help the customer, but the very first moment they go and meet their supervisors, they meet their managers, they start to tell them, no, forget everything on the training that you have. Forget everything related to the training. We are in the ground right now. We need to generate money. We need to generate profit. So forget about it and let's go back to our matrix or our KPIs.
Yeah.
So what trainers will do in this situations?
Okay, the way I do this thing called organizational judo, you've got to work with the energy that's already in the organization, rather than trying to introduce new energy and push against something, you know, the immovable object. You're not going to be able to do that. So in that situation, in that sort of scenario, I would be finding out, as the individual who wanted to, you know, improve customer service and customer experience, what are the metrics that are driving the behavior of my supervisor? You know, what are the numbers that they have to come in against, right? If I can guarantee I'm going to get you those numbers, if I can show you, I'll get you those numbers. And they won't believe you, right? Because they're going to say is, yeah, all that customer service, that words and all those things, they don't mean anything. Say, look, these are your targets, agreed, right? And you might have to go below the radar to actually discern what they are and how they're being measured for success. But let's say you manage to do that. Then if you can say to them, look, I need a week's worth of time to deploy a way of working which will not only deliver those numbers, but go significantly better, right?
Yeah.
Now, they're going to go and say, no, I don't believe you. And you go, what's the worst that can happen? We're going to have a week where we're going to do it the way I would like us to do it, the way we've been trained, right? We're going to do a week like that. And if we haven't got those numbers at the end of it, great. We can put the lid on this and we can put it back in the cupboard. But if I do deliver those numbers, I want the remit to do more, right? So I'll talk to, in our training programs, we talk about let the doing of this stuff become the advocacy to do more. Don't try to sell people on this stuff directly, because they won't get it. You know, hence the very reason for the pack is that if you're going to be able to demonstrate you can reduce costs and grow revenue at the same time. If somebody come to me back in the day when I was, you know, managing the 30,000 people in city and said, look, Steve, I can reduce your cost by 5%, I would have snatched the hand off. Well, I would have probably done an elbow bump now, but you get the idea. I would have done something like that. This stuff that I'm talking about, the way we train it, will fairly typically take 20-25% of costs out. People go, well, yeah, but how does it do that? And you go, well, it's identifying the things you don't need to be doing anymore. And in stopping doing those things, you release that as a cost. Now, most of the levels we've got in our organizations, the KPIs are driving all the behaviors, and the KPIs are usually geared around how many of these things have you done this week or this month or this quarter. If you get the inside track on that, and then see how by doing what you've been trained to do in terms of customer service, customer experience, can meet those metrics, they're not going to argue with you. And after a week you've demonstrated it, they're going to say, well, what sort of alchemy was that? What sort of magic were you weaving to actually achieve those things? And you go, well, it's a structured approach to actually improving service and experience.
Yeah. I faced that before, and I followed the same exact approach. And then I found the management, they told me that let's plot the same experience, the same exercise, the same training across all our facilities. Good. And that was for me a great achievement, that I was able to convince them that we need to conduct the training for each and every one, because this is essential. Yep. One last question. Related to call center. I have a call center agent who asked this question. He tells me desperately, that he has a lot of issues, a lot of challenges in this environment of call center, because it's very dynamic, and some challenges happen, like if he wants to get annual leave and he couldn't because of the rush of the calls, because of the seasonality, maybe because of some changes happening, and so on. So he feels that he is so demotivated to do his work. And also his work is, let me say, it's the same exact work he's doing every day. He's responding, telling the same greeting, giving the same information, meeting the same people. It might be one particular customer who repeats every day or every single hour because he has an issue, or he knows that his company, his organization, they have issue, right? And he is obligated to tell the customer, sorry, customer, we wanted to inform you that the problem will be solved within, and so on. He tells me that, or his question seems that he is so desperate because he has this day-to-day routine. So he tells me that he might be motivated at the first 2 hours of his shift, and the remaining 6 or 7 hours are robot. So I'm not sure what is your answer about it, but it might be giving him some tips to how to overcome this desperation.
Okay, it sounds like he's suffering Groundhog Day. If you have ever seen that film, where every day just keeps repeating itself, and it's like, I mean, the other perspective on that is like, you know, you're in a waking nightmare because you know what's going to happen. You know you're going to get demotivated by 11 o'clock in the morning, and you know the rest of the day is going to be dismal, and you're praying for the end of the day. You know, that's what it revolves around. I do a lot of mentoring as well. And what I say to people, and you meet them in those situations, is you've got to start looking where the grass is greener. You've got to be able to upskill yourself so that you've got the bandwidth to do different things. So you're not locked into that sort of time warp of keeps repeating itself over and over again, you know, with the same nihilistic result at the end. In the meantime, and you know, what I counsel some of the people who I'm mentoring is, look, you're in a place where you're earning a salary, you're earning some money. You can start upskilling yourself in your spare time by looking at different, you know, the available programs and things like that. And there's a lot of the stuff that's out there now, you know, which is available, and it's, you know, free, you know, if for a small sum and that sort of thing. So start upskilling yourself to something that would interest you, right? So that you're preparing yourself for the future. So even though you know today's going to be as miserable as sin, it's going to be awful and dreadful and everything, you know, when you get back to base later on, you've got something exciting that's waiting for you. You've got a call with a few other people who have similar like minds, and you're crafting something together to get yourself out of that particular hole.
Yeah.
Oh, I could hypnotize you. So you imagine you're going into this fantastic place every day where everybody's happy to see you and you're all collaborating. It's wonderful. It's like being in a stage show. Would that work?
Yeah. For me, it works because we we have the same routine, the same exact routine, especially for trainers or learn and development specialists, because sometimes we need to provide the same exact training for, let's say, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days in a row. But as Dr. Stephen Covey said, that we need to sharpen the soul every day or every week or whatever the frequency for you. And also this is one of the emotional intelligence factors that you need to understand. What is your self-motivation? So this is so important. And I feel from this question that this person lacks a lot of self-motivation. He doesn't know what are the drivers for motivations. And of course, I will speak to him as well. And if he wants to have any other or further clarification or maybe mentoring, I will forward his question to you as well.
And
so
it is a common situation, and it talks about working in an environment which doesn't understand how to motivate people and encourage people. And if you're in a toxic environment like that, if you know you can't change it, then you've only got one other choice. But meanwhile, upskill yourself, find yourself with, an interesting hobby which lights your fire, and then, collect the paycheck, thank you very much, while you're upskilling yourself and preparing your future.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I feel that you have something that you need to tell us.
No, I was going to say, if the Customer Experience Secrets book lights your fire, that's going to be available sometime this year. So if anybody's interested, again, to get back to you, and I will give you a complimentary signed copy. We also run around the world until COVID. All our programs have gone online now. So there's one there that's mentioned in August, which is all about, it's a 4-day program, but you can just do 2 days. and it has 2 qualifications associated with it: the accredited customer experience professional. And if you stay the 4 days, which is 5 hours a day, usually, and again, we've been doing these in geographic friendly times. So we did one in Australia, one in Singapore, and things like that. So you don't have to be, staying up until the wee small hours, in GCC sort of region. And you can sign up, do the thing online. It's live. It's with me, and there's dozens of other programs as well. But that's one of the core competence things I think about. And some of the principles we've talked about today in terms of that deck, and helping to convince the hierarchy that this stuff is a good thing to be getting on with, are actually embedded into that program. So you'd be very welcome. There's a link there on the screen, as you can see. What is it, 3 weeks, 4 weeks away now? Yes, 4 weeks away, that. But they're fantastic. We had 22 people finished it last week on the previous one. And it's great fun. We do as best we can, all the teamwork online. We're all in little different rooms, breaking ourselves up into little 3 or 4 people, and then coming back together again. So I'd love you to join that program. Do reach out if we're not already connected on LinkedIn. Bunch of connections there. bpgroup.org at the bottom one is where we list all our training programs, but you probably get blinded with science there. CX Obsession is my blog where I sound off every now and again, and stevetowers.com tells you more about yours truly.
Steve, I would like to thank you so much for coming to the podcast today and giving us some of your valuable time. And also, guys, I will leave for you in the comment section everything related to Steve, everything, either the website or the LinkedIn, and also the link here on the screen. I highly recommend you to follow, because I myself, I benefited a lot from all the speeches and keynotes, and also many free things that you are doing. Thank you, Steve, so much.
It's been a sincere pleasure.
We appreciate your effort and your time. A very big thank you for everyone who attended with us on Zoom or on Facebook. Wait for us for the next episode, which is going to be on Friday. We will have one of the biggest professionals in the world who speak about how to execute your strategy, especially in change period or change times. Again, thank you so much, Steve. Happy to have you today.
Go with peace, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.